My name is Tanya Curry, and this is this week's Acumen Media Report. It's entitled Babel Collapses, Gordhan Passes, and Social Media Decides. Let me start with what I know for sure. Pravin was a fighter. In the Zuma years, this man led us to safety. Well, he tried. I remember Pravin tearing chunks out of Lynn, face like a spanked-bum Brown, who was in charge of Eskom at the time.
And they say excellent. Is that good or bad?
It's bad in the sense that the preparation your council did for you is working, but we'll leave that for now.
I just wanted to say that it was
well done, well performed.
That it wasn't information that was being handed to me from the chair.
So, Chair, we're going to add 3 minutes or 4 minutes to what I've got to say, but let me also add on the question of officials. Mr. Kreiwagen across the table here has a perpetual smirk on his face, and there's a bit of grimacing every now and again. And I think officials are required to remain neutral. They're required to remain neutral. Tomorrow you can have another minister. Ask me, you see. So your job is to serve the public and the state, not a particular purpose. And you might not be too proud when the truth comes out as to what you have been serving. And the public is watching very keenly as to what's going on here. Just a bit of advice. And Minister, you mentioned 250 professionals in your department. Most of them are good, honest people. But I don't think any one of them wants to be part of state capture.
I remember Pravin making Adnaj Singh literally hop in and out of the courtroom to escape the daggers of questions being tossed at him.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Singh, is self-preservation, in your case, trumping conscience and ethics? If you understand the question. Is self-preservation trumping conscience and ethics? In other words, you have to survive at any cost, including lying, misleading. You know, all of us are getting messages from people who are watching this. I'll read you one, which is about the 5th one I think I've got. Anuj taking you guys for fools. That's the impression you're creating amongst the public. So you're actually saying to South Africans, and your own family, by the way, the mother that you referred to earlier on, amongst others, that you will continue to stand here, continue to deny what you've really been guilty of, rather than own up and help the country cleanse itself of corruption.
Pravin was the man of the moment. One meeting sticks in my mind more than others. It was Ahmed Kathrada's birthday. Sadly, it was Uncle Kathy's last. Just writing that makes me emotional. Pravin stood up at the celebration and told us exactly who Zuma and his chommies were and what it is they were up to. This was so brave because this was while Zuma was still in power. It took courage, and I wanted Pravin to be our president. Do you remember his speech just after Kathrada's memorial, the memorial which Zuma refused to recognize as a national event? Gordhan told us that to join the dots and to mobilize South Africa.
But the public is connecting the dots, members of the board. Increasingly, the public is aware of what you as the board of Eskom are doing and not doing. They are increasingly aware that you are abusing state property and state resources in the name of yourselves, not in the name of the South African public. That you are part of, either wittingly or unwittingly, in some cases I think there's enough evidence to say wittingly, a conspiracy to capture Eskom for the purposes of the benefit of a few.
And that Zuma must fall, and that became a national movement. And the rest is history. That was Pravin Gordhan. Later in his career, with his mandate being SOEs, things didn't go so well. Gordhan's magic act he performed around SAA was a weak rendition of a David Copperfield trick, this time how to make an airline disappear. He sold it, resurrected it, killed it, reinvented it at a price tag of $50, And if that wasn't money laundering, I don't know what is. We all hate funny numbers, and people may have other things to say about Gordhan, but for me, that was the end of the laughter and soft light. Dudumyeni gutted SAA, and Gordhan used it like a top-loader washing machine. That's who Pravin Gordhan became. Social media was absolutely brutal. The things they said about PG were appalling and largely amplified by the EFF statement that read, "The EFF notes the death of Pravin Gordhan without any pretense of sorrow. His legacy is one of destruction and betrayal." And this train of insults continued, spewing vitriol about a dead man. All classes, our Julius. With hindsight, my nation, do you think that Gordhan had a choice? I don't. I think a good man tried to fight for right, but one man isn't enough. I think they got to him in the end. And without doubt, he is our top story this week. Rest in peace, Pravin Gordhan. Last week it was Tom London ripping through our healthcare system, and this week, Mhlali, who blew the lid open on restaurants that abuse their staff. Babel Restaurant became headlines across the country as we learned that waiters had to buy their own uniforms and their own bottle openers before they would even be considered for a position. Mhlali was willing to swallow all the strange policies and procedures so that she could work, until breakages in the restaurant resulted in her working a double shift and still having to pay the restaurant owner 100 rand. Enraged, she vented over TikTok, and the nation agreed.
Guys, the restaurant that I'm about to expose, I'm sure they've broken every right at the Labor Relations Act. Just opened, it's in Menlyn. I've been working there for a few days now. So what happened is I went for a job interview. I showed them my CV and my socials, and I was hired on the spot. And then they told me that I should buy a uniform for this job, right? So a cross belt, a white shirt, black shorts, black apron, black shoes. I was like, okay, you know what? It's fine. I'm going to buy those things because I'm just grateful that I got the job. It was a bit for me at first because I was like, I've worked at other places previously and I've never had to buy my own uniform. But I was like, hey, it's whatever. I went to work the next day and then there was just like, oh, guys, there were more things piling up. As waitresses, Zitibana, we have to buy our own equipment, right? I didn't know about that. So basically, equipment is a bottle opener, a cigar cutter, a cigarette lighter, cigar lighter. Like you buy all of these things yourself out of your own pocket. Mind you, I had just spent 1,000 rand on just the uniform, excluding alterations, excluding the transport fees, and now I have to buy the equipment myself. But I was like, you know what, it's fine. This was 10 years because I had all of these things within the second day that I was working there, only to find out that there is no contract. There is nothing that is legally binding between you and the restaurant. You just go there, you work. If you get fired, you get fired because there's no contract. How are you going to defend yourself? That was the second red flag for me, actually. And then they were like, we don't have a basic salary. As not basic salary, you make imali liquid tips. This wasn't discussed with me prior. You make imali liquid tips. There's like a mandatory tip of 10% that they bill to the customer. But even that 10% tip, the restaurant takes about, I think it's 20%, 30%. I stand to be corrected. Something about breakage and leverage, I don't know. So, 10%, they still take imali etil. And when you come into work, you have to pay what they call a runner fee, which is 200 rand. So basically, a runner is someone that assists the waitress. And then you also have to pay your runner at the end of the night. Wrong, or maybe I don't know how things work, but all of this seemed extreme to me, especially considering the fact that we don't have a basic salary. So fine, I worked there. My first day, it was not smooth sailing because it is my first day. Yes, I've worked at other places, but it's my first time working here. I'm still trying to learn how things work up. Guys, when I tell you what I went through at that restaurant, I have never gone through that in my entire life, even in my personal life. The way that they treat us, even the way that they talk to us, they make us feel less than, they belittle us. Asina break, you work from 1 p.m. up until 2 a.m. the next day. There's no break. You have to sneak maybe a Red Bull in the bathroom or outside in the corner, even if you're eating ipie yako. We get like, a manager is going to walk in and scold you for that. It's so, guys, and I just felt like I had to speak up because there is no ways. I don't even know if the customers know that the employees are being treated this way. You know? But I was like, let me suck this up, yabo. Let me just try my best to make imali. But it's even hard to make kwalamali tips because you find that most of the managers, they're friendly with some of the waitresses. So you could be standing there whole day and not even get tables because they're giving it a feel like chommies abo when I also sebenza. For example, last week Sunday, I went home with a debt to the restaurant. I ended up having to owe the restaurant 20 rand because of leverage and breakage and whatnot. After working from 1 p.m. up until 2 a.m., I ended up owing them. Excuse me. For example, today, I've worked so hard, but just because andinikwa itafile mna, mhlambi customers will come, they'll say, no, itafile kaban ban leyana, no customer kaban ban. You're like, okay, sharp, sure, I see how this is. Today I went home with 100 rand tips. I went home with 100 rand tips today after working from 1 p.m. up until 2 a.m. And I was like, you know what? But it's okay. So before work started, we complained that the cutlery are short, things are slow in the kitchen. Then they were like, we are losing the cutlery, therefore everybody is getting fined 200 rand. How are we losing the cutlery? Who is taking it home? Who is losing it where? Like Sipele restaurant, they search our bags when you go home. So where is it being lost? So basically, we are buying a cutlery here restaurant because they find all of us 200 rand. That accountant or whatever she is, she gave me this 100 rand. Then the manager came to me. She's like, Mihlali, we know you're not on the WhatsApp group, but we're finding everyone 200 rand.
Rise social media justice. Within hours, the restaurant was raided by the Hawks, and so began a series of investigations across several Sandton restaurants. Illegal immigrants, unpaid wages, poor working conditions, and more came creeping out of the kitchens. We are all Mihlali. Enough is enough. Let's check in with Tom London. Today at 10 o'clock, Tom is going into surgery. Spare a prayer for our human rights defender and my dear friend. He's had all sorts going on while he's been desperately ill, and I've watched him continue to fight even though he's been so ill. He's a Viking, our Thomas, and I promise you this, when Tom gets out and he is well, he's going to take our leaders to school. Social media justice. There's more good news. Remember that skipper that was kidnapped in Sudwana, and social media started its own search and investigative operation to bring back John Matambu? Well, this week, pitbull lawyer Harry Nell agreed to take on the case pro bono, and he told the family that Fissa, the perpetrator, would never get out of prison. This was after our own police system could not even slap this guy with the theft of a boat, let alone the murder of one of Sudwana's legends. Social media mob justice. Then there was Tabu Besta. Did you watch this big baby reaching for his box of tissues? Oh my word. He bleated for over an hour and a half about how he should have a laptop and modem. It was his human right, and he is innocent until proven guilty, and he never escaped, and he can't wear his swanky clothes, and he doesn't even have a pencil.
Your Honor, I require access to a laptop to type.
I'll give you a laptop and a modem, so I'll give you access to hard copy books, but I'm not giving you a laptop and a modem. You can have access to hard copy.
But Your Honor, you haven't even heard my application. You are making a decision up front.
You're not giving access.
For what reason, which constitutional reason do you give to deny me access without hearing my application, Your Honor? That is prejudice of you not to allow me to.
You will get law books. They are the same books that every jurist in the country, pre a certain when I started practice 30-something years ago. They will give you access to all the information you need for purposes of preparation of both your main application and your defence in the Free State. And that is essentially what you are. So you will get access to it.
Can I
I'm not
finish my
giving you
application?
access to a laptop.
Can I bring my application before the court?
You can make your submissions, Mr. Bester, with pleasure.
Your Honor, I would like to take the court into the processes that I've gone through to bring this application before the court. And
The judge told him in the beginning that she was not going to give him his laptop and modem, but still he droned on and on and on and on. He gave me a headache. This guy's kidding, isn't he? He doesn't know that he's a convicted rapist and killer, right? He does know that we went to fetch his branded butt from Tanzania, didn't we? Right? He does know he left a body in a cell and escaped in a TV stand, and that we have that on film, right? Why is he even a story? I've said it before and I'll say it again. Why do we care? This is a diversion or another decouplet story. Switch it off. Let's stay in the court. Serial rapist Sifiso Makwanazi was sentenced to 170 years. Rosemary Ndlovu, remember her? She's the serial life insurance killer. She's in jail and she's up in court again for trying to kill a cop after his wife contracted her to arrange the hit. Witchy woman. Then we had the other lunatic, Mboro, tell us that his gun-carrying mate, that the gun was actually a replica. Oh, well, that's okay then. No problem. I mean, really, what is our problem? A panga and a replica gun in a school is completely acceptable. The judge that was meant to recuse herself refused and then granted this chop 3,000 rand bail. He went on his way merrily to give his first sermon. Here's the really crazy bit. The audience lapped it up. Is it a cult, guys? If we need one person fired, it's the guy who didn't fill up the 7 million litres of backup water supply at Charlotte Maxeko Hospital. Joburg Water stopped supply to the area and the entire hospital was without water for 4 days. All because someone didn't open a tap. What is his or her name? Come on, let's have some social media justice. Then there was the Bella Bill, the change to South Africa's education that the DA are very edgy about, although I'm still not sure why this is a bad bill. From what I understand, children will have to start school in grade R, and truancy will be punishable by law. Homeschooling will be monitored more closely. Don't be ridiculous, we can't even open a tap. And local languages get preference as a second language. Now, I don't see anything bad here, so please educate me. There were other horror stories. An 11-year-old was stabbed 66 times because the father was angry at the child's mother. It's true. I read the news so you don't have to. Similani, the chick that the president has in his sights about VBS, jetted off to BRICS this week. We read how former City of Cape Town housing member Malusi Boy was granted 250,000 rand bail in a case where R1 billion disappeared for a housing tender. R1 billion. Really? That's not even fraud anymore. It's murder. How many people died because they slept in the cold or lost their lives on the streets? Rise social media justice. Let's take this cowboy off his high horse. On the subject of high horses, remember Matthew Larney, the fake doctor? Well, he's homeless now. That story made me a little sad. It's often difficult to watch the wheel turn, hey? Staying with cash strapped, South Africans jumped when they were told that they could take some of their pension money early in a new two-pot system. Of course, most South Africans dived at the opportunity only to find that half the institutions had never paid their pension money across in the first place. Surely that is more than fraud. How many people will starve after working tirelessly their entire lives for the state? Where are you, social media justice? I think I've covered most of South Africa, except perhaps the gnarly weather that we're enduring and the national strike that is looming on October 7th. I suppose I should mention that Duduzane is thinking of joining his dad. My eyes roll really far back into my head. So there's one story that has caused so much pain this week. Lebanon. Those that know me know my father was Lebanese. So when I heard that Israel planted explosives in a shipment of pages destined for Hezbollah, I was perturbed. Then I watched parts of people's bodies blown off. A man's face split in two trying to hold his head together. Innocents become collateral damage. So yet again we are reminded that kids really don't matter to Netanyahu's regime. 2 children were killed in the first attack, and then the next attack happened 24 hours later, and this time walkie-talkies, mobile phones, alarm clocks and solar panels became weapons of destruction. This was in Lebanon, not in Gaza, not in the West Bank, not in Israel. An entirely different country. I took to social media because I wanted information about friends I have in Lebanon, but instead I found the most revolting thing I've seen since I've worked in media. A local journalist had put up several posts celebrating and making fun of this situation. Clearly he's a proud Zionist and I didn't expect any sympathy from him, but the last thing I expected was entertainment about dismemberment. A celebration of destruction. Bloodlust at its worst. The glorification of mutilation. He called it very cool, amongst other horrible statements. Listen up. Switch the narrative. Imagine the Syrians had put an explosive in the American soldiers' walkie-talkies. Would he still think that was cool? What if the Russians had put it in the Ukrainians' mobile phones? Is that still cool? I think he'd probably call it a terrorist attack, or something along those lines. What if the Lebs did it to the IDF? Would he still think it was cool? I'm with Edward Snowden when he says, what Israel has just done is, via any method, reckless. They blew up countless numbers of people who were driving, meaning cars out of control, shopping, children in a stroller standing behind in the checkout lines, etc. Indistinguishable from terrorism. It's not funny, and it's certainly not cool. This journalist lost his job at a reputable news outlet. I doubt he cares. We do, though. This was a ridiculous move. What does Bibi expect will happen next? There's going to be a retaliation and many will die. How on earth can that ever be cool? What lies between bloodlust and jokes? Right, let's wrap this up because we all have a weekend to get to. Across the seas, Weinstein pleads not guilty. P. Diddy was arrested for racketeering, sex trafficking and transportation to engage in prostitution. Yep. The charges are tied to Diddy's parties that are termed freak-offs, where coerced sex acts that he orchestrated were recorded. He's going to drop files, that's for sure, and prepare for disappointment because there are only a handful of celebrities that were not on his VIP list. What else? Trump had another assassination attempt. Do you believe it? I'm not sure I'm buying that one. This weekend he's off to Ohio to see about those pets on the menu and stir things up. Kanye, or Ye, skipped court because, well, it doesn't apply to him. We watched the Emmys with a great deal of skepticism. How is it still a thing? We saw that South Africa's parley sessions aren't too bad as the Brazilian parliament turned into a brawl with chairs being cracked over people's heads. The weather is as bad overseas as it is here. Typhoon Yagi created havoc. That means I'm not going diving. How inconsiderate is this weather? I haven't been in the water for 3 weeks and all this land-based stuff is driving me crazy. So if you see me being tossed into the waves, you know I couldn't take it anymore and I've gone diving. I'm Tanya Curry and thank you for scratching the surface with me in Acumen Media.